access to this information. So there we go. So we are now recording. With that, I will introduce myself and welcome you all. My name is Lisa Helps, and I'm the executive lead for BC Builds, which is a new housing program to deliver middle-income housing for working people across the province. We have with us today Jeremy Johnston from the District of Elkford, who is going to share some information about this opportunity, as well as my colleague Ali here from BC Builds, BC Housing, and then all of you who've taken time to join us. So the main thrust of today's session is to answer all of your questions. So we're going to be as brief as possible in a bit of a program overview. And then we're really excited to have so many of you here today interested in the District of Elkford and this opportunity to help them build what is essentially the first ground floor retail with housing above in what will be their downtown. So really exciting opportunity. Before I hand it over to Jeremy to walk you through and then hand it over to all of you to ask your questions, I'm just going to give you a high-level overview of the process that we're in right now. So I'm going to share my screen. And so you've probably been to the website and seen this already, but just to walk you through where we are and where we go from here. So we've posted zoned land on the site, and you're here because you saw that. We will receive all of your proposals for the District of Elkford on June the 28th. That deadline has been set by the district as to when they'd like to receive submissions. After we receive the submissions, BC Builds and the District of Elkford will work together to evaluate the proposals. And I want to show you in just a moment the criteria we're using so that everyone's clear and it's fair and transparent. Once we've selected, and we don't know how long that's going to take, that evaluation process. We're aiming for it to be no more than a month, but that will depend on the number of proposals we get. But regardless, you'll know pretty soon. Once we've selected the successful proponent, we'll ask that group to sign a conditional land contribution letter. And that lays out the expectations between BC Builds and the successful applicant and the District of Elkford in terms of next steps. And the next step, as those of you who may have been following BC Builds, is critically important, which is we get the project under construction within 12 to 18 months of signing that initial land contribution letter. And what we all do in that time, the developer, builder, operator designs the building and takes it through development permit, building permit. BC Builds works with you to get the funding and financing in place, and the District of Elkford on their end speeds through the approvals process as quickly as possible. So that's the process, and that's where we go from here. Just to be really transparent about what we're evaluating, and I think I may need to stop share and reshare. And hopefully you've had a chance to look at this already, but just in case not, this is the District of Elkford's property opportunity notice. Nope, that's not it. I opened everything in advance so I would be so organized. All right, I may have to do this again. Oh, I see. Okay. Thanks for your patience. There we go. So, and you've probably had an opportunity to read through this, and Jeremy will speak in a moment to what the District of Elkford is expecting. But at the bottom of the document here on page 10, these are how the projects are going to be scored. So the first thing we're going to do, and again, there's detailed information about who is an eligible applicant, what the target household incomes are. For the operators, if you have property management experience, or if you don't, if you're partnering with a experienced property manager, and then same thing, demonstrated development experience. So these criteria here, they're not scored. This is basically the cutoff. If you tick all these boxes, which hopefully you will, and again, they're spelled out really clearly here, then we will evaluate the proposal based on all of these criteria here. And I'm not going to read through them, but I just want to stress a couple of things. Just maybe hear some background noise, so maybe if people could go on mute. Perfect. So key for BC Builds projects is there's no ongoing operating subsidy for any of these buildings. So we've given very high weighting to the financial viability and sustainability of the project, which means the project needs to carry itself with the rents that are charged. And then the other key criteria here that we've given high weighting to is amount of per unit subsidy required. And that's the grant amount. So again, if you've had a read through, you'll see that we can offer up to $225,000 per unit in grant to offset the cost of construction. We're aiming for below $225,000 per unit. So basically the lower the grant amount, the higher the score here is. We're aiming for 20% of units at 20% below market. If you can deliver more, that's great. We're aiming for the target household incomes that are laid out in the BC Builds program framework, which hopefully you'll read before submitting. And then also 15% for speed to market. So we want to get these projects built and with people living in them as soon as possible. So those are the criteria. There's lesser points here for other things, but I really wanted to stress those. You may have some questions about those things, and we will answer those in just a moment, but I want to turn it over to Jeremy first from the District of Elkford to walk through what the district is looking for. So Jeremy, over to you.
Thanks, Lisa, and thanks everybody for joining today and your interest in our opportunity. Elkford's really excited to finally be able to publish this. Our council's been working hard to set up our new downtown, spending over $10 million in the last few years to pre-service, do all offsite works, and get our bylaws and everything set up to make development down here as easy as possible. I'm going to throw up the property opportunity notice. Trust everyone can see that. Probably not going to be covering much that isn't already discussed in here, but I'll try and go through this quickly and then we can get to questions. The site we're looking at in Elkford is right at the corner of Alpine Way and Boivin Road, which is this corner site you're looking at in red here. It's actually it's 5 sites that will be consolidated, as well as a little piece of road that we'll have to close and consolidate as well. But we are intending to do that once this is ready to charge forward. As I said, it's been pre-zoned, and I'll cover zoning in a minute here. If you haven't been to Elkford, this site is about 100 meters west of our main intersection with Highway 43, which is the highway that brings all the workforce up the valley and off to site to do their business for the day. You can see all the legal details there. The civic address, 421 Boivin Road, if you're looking it up on Google Maps. Just over an acre in size, with property frontage on both Alpine Way and Boivin Road. Pre-serviced, and I've included the civil drawings from our civil project in the appendix, and that's a vector drawing, so you should be able to zoom in and get all the detail you need there. And plenty of links here for our OCP zoning details. The downtown plan, which was adopted and which led to everything we've done in the past few years, as well as all the public engagement and everything we went through there. And then some bylaw and a little bit more information there in our investor package and whatnot. So the property is zone C1, town center commercial. So it's a mixed use zone with a full gamut of uses you can see in the notice in detail there. We do have a height limit of 13.5 meters. Contemplated here was, a story of commercial on the ground floor and then up to 3 stories of residential above. We did remove the density limit, so we're really just looking to see what folks can make fit on the site, and we're not dictating a limit there. It is within 2 of our development permit areas, one being our commercial form and character, and the other being energy efficiency and water conservation. And you can find the details on those guidelines in our OCP, which is linked on the page before. Again, if you don't know Elkford, the site's vacant. It's been vacant for years. We do have a post office just west of it. And otherwise, it's surrounded by more district-owned land and some land intended for public parking and some other uses. And just south, a construction project is underway for the Elkford Housing Society, which is a 25-unit apartment residential building. They've just put the third story on that within the last couple of weeks. Site's relatively flat. It is just a little over 30 meters south of Boivin Creek, but otherwise fairly unconstrained. We didn't list any community engagement requirements. This, we've gone through an extensive process in our downtown plan to come up with the concept here. So we're not expecting, like, everybody's seeing this thing coming from a mile away. So shouldn't expect anything there. No amenity or bonusing requirements, nothing to note here. I guess onto what we're looking for, and this is directed by our council. So this is, what we've included in the opportunity is a developer and operator willing to enter into a long-term lease at no cost. And then we've listed a nonprofit society, co-op, or First Nations Development Corporation as the desired owner operator. And I put together Appendix A for this opportunity. I might kind of, one thing I wanted to highlight, sorry, and it is literally highlighted in the document, is, well, a primarily residential project, this being, our corner site in our new downtown, we do want to see a portion of ground floor commercial. We're not really dictating how much we want to see there, but we do want to see some. So I've highlighted that there. I'm not going to get into the equity requirements if that's okay. Lisa's probably the better expert on some of this stuff here. Get this. So on to Appendix A. My first page here is just a quick summary of some of the things the district's been doing to set ourselves up and set the development community up for success. We do have revitalization tax exemptions, but of course, permissive exemptions could also apply. Low development cost charges and good potential for waivers, this being rental housing. As I said, we've done the offsite infrastructure, provided that no upgrades are required. The sidewalks are all in. We've got fresh asphalt, lighting, furniture. It's beautiful down there. So it's a really good opportunity that way. As far as we're aware, we're pre-zoned for exactly what we're looking for here. No density limit. We got rid of the parking requirements on this block. So there's no on-site parking requirements, and we just didn't want to dictate it. So, whatever the market feels is necessary can work. We have allocated $125,000 as a direct financial contribution. Our intention with that money initially was to help with design work, and so I think upon a successful proponent being chosen, we'll figure out exactly how to make that contribution and make it work for both parties, but that is available. And that last bullet there, we've had a lot of inquiries from businesses about housing and trying to be parts of projects, and so while we can't guarantee anything, we want to make this work, and we'll be working to make connections with businesses that are looking for rental units for their employees. So a couple photos of the site, you can see outlined in red there. Relatively flat, nice views of the mountains. There's Wapiti Mountain in the back, our fresh asphalt in front, our post office in green. This is looking west. Looking more north, so you can still see the site. And of course, some fresh paint. This is from last fall, so since then some lamp standards have gone in and a little bit more work's been done. Towards the end here, you've got some slides. This is from our civil work that was done, so you've got some relatively recent elevation measurements here, and you can see the design and the layout in a bit more detail. And then the folks at BC Housing went through a bit of a massing concept. So that's what you're seeing as you get into these pages here. Skip ahead here. So this concept building occupies most of the site. And I believe in their concept, they had a little over 80 units in this building here. This is showing, of course, commercial on the ground floor and 3 stories of residential above, and some parking access on the west and north flanks of the building, with parking actually tucked in behind the commercial. So a bit of a commercial skirt. Just a couple more angles here, and here you can see the other parking access. So that's certainly an option to include covered ground floor parking. This slide shows the offsite works that were done, so you can see in a little bit more detail the sidewalks and on-street parking and things like that. And as well, a public parking area that's just north of the site right here. That hasn't been constructed yet, but it will be. As I said, the civil drawings included in detail, so you can zoom right in and get more detail on the municipal services along the site, and then also entering the site through the lane that I mentioned before that will be closed as part of this. So there will be, or we anticipate there will be, some services abandoned in that lane. It was initially configured as a kind of a 5-property site, but with this opportunity, we're excited about the opportunity to use the whole site for one building. So this one, I think, just shows some of the traffic flow through the site or through the area. So again, if you haven't been to Elkford, the main intersection with the highway is just here where my cursor is. You've got a couple gas stations to the northwest and northeast. And yeah, thousands of folks coming up this highway every day to go to techs to industrial sites there. That slide just shows you in a bit closer detail the layout and some of the dimensions. And I believe that's the end of the property opportunity notice. And I think the end of everything I wanted to cover. So I'll wrap it up there for now.
Great, thanks, Jeremy. And I just really want to commend the District of Elkford. As you can see, they've put a lot of thought and a lot of work into the site to get it ready for today and for applications. So we're now open to questions. If you feel confident and happy to put your hand up and ask a question on screen, totally fine. And if you'd rather use the chat, that's also fine. I'm going to start with the chat because there is one question already there. Which is, are you seeking a developer that also invests equity in the project, or is it open to a development manager / consultant to lead the development process? Jeremy, maybe I'll start with that and then I can go to you. So as you would have seen in the property opportunity notice, there is 5% scoring for if the proponent is able to inject any additional equity. So it's low compared to the other parts of the scoring. So it's not 0, but it's low. I think what we're looking for BC Builds in general with these opportunities is we want to receive packages from folks who can actually build housing or get housing built within, construction started within 12 to 18 months. If it's a development manager consultant that can bring an operator to the table as part of the proposal and has the confidence to find someone to build the building when it comes time, I think that's just fine with us. As Jeremy noted, Elkford is looking specifically for a nonprofit co-op or First Nations Development Corp. Yeah, I think development consultants are fine as long as they're the ones pulling together the team and putting together a complete submission. Jeremy, did you want to add anything in addition to that?
I think you've covered it, Lisa. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. What else do people want to know about this opportunity? Yeah, Dwight, go ahead. Or Dwight.
Yes, thank you. Dute.
Dute.
That's fine. I'm a partner of a business group based out of BC and Alberta. And we have they're developers, builders, and we have modular homes which are built and assembled in Dubai, and they're shipped here to Canada. And they are fire rated, they are folded, they can be assembled within 4 hours, and then disassembled within 10 minutes with a crane. And so when I saw the email, I prompted my partners about it, and they wanted me to find out more information about it. So we're wondering, are we the people that that would the kind of business developers and builders that you would be looking for that can provide these construction of these homes. We have small homes. We have family homes, and we also have. Give me just one moment here. We also have solar. They're renewable. We have it's a combination of grid or solar, and it can be retrofitted to whatever is is required. The fire rating would be pending whatever the fire rating would be required from the BC government. And what else? See, we also have a green fencing, which is green and recyclable. And we also have the services of protective services of security services, which we can implement for access control of the site to private suites, rooms, quarters, and that's all done with a license from the government to be able to provide electronic locking devices and access control. And so my partners, so we're wondering, is that something that your department would be interested in continuing to have talks with myself and my partners?
So I guess I'll ask a follow-up question. So Jeremy showed very clearly that this is multi-unit residential. So does your company build multi-unit residential or just single-family duplex, like smaller modulars?
Both.
Okay.
One of the developers out of Alberta has skyscrapers. So we can build anything.
Okay. Jeremy, did you want to, I can comment on, you're obviously eligible to submit a proposal. As noted in the property opportunity notice, you'd need to combine with a nonprofit who would be the owner operator. So we're looking for complete proposals, not just builders here. So that's what I can offer. So Jeremy, do you have any insight as to preferred form of construction?
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. It'll be required to meet BC building code unless an architect has an acceptable alternative. So in terms of form of construction, I don't think we'll be too prescriptive. It's more the form, as Lisa mentioned. We're looking for multi-story, multi-unit. So.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Brenda. Go ahead.
Hi there. How are you doing, Lisa?
Good. Nice to see you.
You as well. Brenda from BC Indigenous Housing Society. I don't know if this might be more of a question for Jeremy. I'm just curious what the local Indigenous population is, and do you have any statistics on the housing need with the Indigenous people in their area? And then also, is there any particular audience that you're trying to create housing for, such as seniors or others like that you want to target for this development that would help? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I guess the local Indigenous nations would be Yakitak Nucleat and of the Tanaha Nation. We don't have stats specifically on Indigenous housing need, and I would say that we're not targeting any specific group outside of what's described in the notice, which would be the working families within the certain income ranges prescribed there.
Okay, perfect.
Great,
and actually,
thank you.
Thanks, Brenda. And there's a really important question in the chat, which probably I should have not assumed that everyone had read the BC Builds program framework. I really, first of all, before I answer the question in the chat, I really encourage everyone to read everything they can on BC Builds. The Housing Development Opportunities site has everything you should need to submit a proposal. In case it doesn't, look at the About BC Builds page and read the detailed program framework. So the question is in the chat, is there an opportunity to plan a portion of the units for market rents in this building? Yes, absolutely. So for those who aren't aware, BC Builds is an 80-20 model. 80% of units rent at market and 20% of units rent at 20% below market. So that's what you're targeting when you submit your proposals. This is not subsidized or supportive or affordable housing. It's really meant to service working people in the community. I think Elkford's vision of having the owner-operator be a nonprofit over the long term, when nonprofit societies are mission-driven and over time, rents in relation to market will drop. But yes, that's the model is 80-20. It's so just so everyone's clear about that when you're putting your pro formas together. And oh, thanks. Ali just posted the housing development opportunities in the chat. And Ali, could you also put the program framework itself, the PDF, in the chat, just so people can reference that? Paul, go ahead.
Thank you. And hello, everybody. I have a few questions. It's okay if I ask more than one at a time?
Absolutely. Yep.
Perfect.
You bet.
So with respect to BC building code, obviously we have to meet code. Is there any guidance on step code 3, 4 passive? Do you have any thoughts on what sort of build that you're looking for? Is one of my questions. That can come back after if you like, if you need some thought on there. And building permits, is there a fast track at all to this? Do we need to account? I don't know really, or that's my ignorance, so I apologize, but is there a 6-month wait for permits? Is it 8 months? Is it 2 months? Just some guidance on there to understand the timing of it. Second question. And then the third one is the suite breakdown. I've heard reference to about 80 units if possible, but what I'd like to know is your town. Are you looking to drive more single units, 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom? What works better for your community? Is it more younger families that might work with a 2-bedroom? How do we organize that design for you best?
Yeah, thanks for the questions. I can go right into these, Lisa. We're not going to be prescriptive on step code, so we'll be happy to see whatever can meet code there. There was an opportunity in that notice to go beyond BC building code, and I did not, opt to put anything in there. Timing for building permit, I would lean towards the 2-month of the spectrum you gave. We do not see a ton of development period, and we certainly don't see a ton of these larger projects. So I'm fairly confident that we'll be giving this a priority, and that is our intention, to kind of put this thing in the front of our queue when we get it. So we'll be as quick as we can there. In terms of suite breakdown, we usually see in like the concepts and what we see 1 and 2 bedrooms. There is a reference in the notice of encouraging 2 and 3 bedrooms, so that is something we'd be encouraged to see. Am I going to say that it's required? I would say not, especially on the 3-bedroom, but it's we have a lot of families looking at Elkford as a place to live, and so giving those folks an opportunity through this building would be great. So I hope that answers that question.
It does, yes. Thank you.
Okay, and Brandon, I'm guessing you were going to ask a similar question because I saw your hand go down.
Yes, that's right. Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks,
you're
Paul.
welcome. In the chat, there's a question, is there a checklist for the application? What should the proposal include? Yes, on page 10 of the property opportunity notice, and I can cut and paste it into the chat. There's a list of everything that is required to submit a proposal. I'm not going to spend the time reading it out because it is there in writing for all of you, but hopefully my cut and paste works well. It doesn't look as good as it does in the document, but read through the property opportunity notice in detail and you'll see everything that's required for a submission. Yeah, Brandon, go ahead.
Sorry, just came up with another question. This might be for Jeremy. Would there be the opportunity for the successful applicant to be able to purchase the land at some point, or is it strictly a 60 to 99 year lease?
Yeah, it's a good question. Our council gave us direction for the sake of this notice to do the lease option. They did consider the ownership option and chose the lease one. So that's kind of where I'm at today. To say how it could play out in the future, I don't know, but that's what we're putting forward in this opportunity.
Thank you, Jeremy.
All right. Yeah, Paul, back to you. And please feel free to ask any and all questions because this is a really good opportunity while we've got everyone here to air all we can about this project. Yeah, Paul, go ahead.
And thank you. We are a builder, so we'd be looking to partner with an operator. Is there going to be an addendum or somewhere that lists parties interested, or just through BC Builds that will show so that we can pursue just talks with operators?
We don't have a preferred list. I think, yeah, the best thing to do is reach out into your networks, maybe contact the BC Nonprofit Housing Association. They're a good resource for operators. They would certainly know who's working in that area or who might look to work in that area. So I think the BC Nonprofit Housing Association is probably the best bet. And Ali can pop maybe their website or their contact info into the chat.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I think there's at least one operator on this call.
And there's no restrictions on where the submission comes from in Canada, or is it specifically just Canada or overseas, or does it matter?
It doesn't say. We don't specify. Yeah, we're looking, the eligibility requirements that I showed at the beginning are the ones that we're going to be measuring.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. Austin, go ahead.
Yeah, so I represent Kootenay Métis Housing Society, which is a nonprofit. I personally have experience in development of a project under the Indigenous Housing Program here in Cranbrook, where I am, and have managed a nonprofit low-income affordable housing for Indigenous people for 7 years before I semi-retired. So we are interested in looking at opportunities out in Elkford. I've been there several times. And so my board is in Elkford and in Fernie. So we out in that area, understand it, and are certainly interested in partnering with someone. So you can reach out to me, we can have a chat. And it's austinparisian@gmail.com.
Perfect. Thank you. That's great. Yeah, we were hoping that today could generate some of these connections as well. If you feel comfortable putting your email in the chat, please do, although I think Paul might have gotten it down. Okay, great.
Thanks.
Other questions?
Excuse me.
Dupig, go ahead.
Thank you. Where's the email? Would you just tell me what your email is, or is that? Oh, yeah, I think
I'll put it in.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. Thank you.
Perfect. I just want to canvass to make sure that all questions have been asked and answered before we depart. Just checking the chat one more time. I don't want to leave any stone unturned. You've got Jeremy here right at the heart of the matter. So. Yeah, go ahead, Dean.
Hi guys. Just for your information, added information for the developers and the societies that want to come. Tech just moved in 25 South African families. They're living right now in temporary residence that Tech owns, but they'd only be allowed to stay there for so long, and then they have to find permanent residence. So that is probably an added bonus to whoever wants to develop. Thanks.
Thanks for that comment, Dean. That's really helpful. And Brandon, before I go to you, I realized I missed the second half of a question that was put in the chat. The question is also, we presume the commercial units are strata units for sale or for lease. Jeremy, do you have a sense of how the commercial units on the bottom floor would be handled?
We don't, I guess, you know, in that the land is being leased, I would probably expect those to just be single ownership, but I also don't need to be more prescriptive than that on the commercial. So
Okay, so you'll leave it to the building owner to figure out the best model with the tenants that they choose.
absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Brandon, go ahead.
Yeah, just if we were to have any follow-up questions after this info session, how could those be submitted?
Great question. So those questions should come directly to info@bcbuildshomes.ca. Alistair will put that in the chat. Because this is a fair and transparent process, and we have a proposal call open, we can't have everyone going to the municipal governments. So any questions that are asked will be answered, and then the answers will be posted to an updated property opportunity notice, which will be available to everybody on the website. So that's the best way to get follow-up information. And if there's a question that only Jeremy can answer, we'll direct that through our office to him. But we're trying to, one of the reasons we set up BC Builds and are doing the work this way is because local governments have land, but they've got a million other things to do rather than just build housing. And so this platform is meant to take some of that capacity and heavy lifting away from them. So info@BC Builds Homes, not a direct outreach to the local government.
info@bcbuildshomes.com.ca.
It's in the chat, info@bcbuildshomes.ca.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You know, I have one of the members of our business group is First Nations, and they asked me to ask if this is primarily a non-Indigenous housing builds project, rather than, because I understand that the BC government and I believe the federal government has allocated funds separate for First Nations housing development on First Nations land, or maybe a joint venture between government and First Nations land and the private sector. And I understand this project has nothing to do with that. It's separate, a separate project entirely.
Yeah, that's right. When we designed BC Builds, we wanted to make sure that there was housing and economic opportunity for First Nations as well. So that's why First Nations are mentioned. All BC Builds projects that are on public land are eligible to be owned and operated by nonprofits, co-ops, or First Nations, or if the municipality says by a private operator as well, but that's not the instance here. So First Nations are included because we want First Nations to have economic opportunity through BC Builds. But this is not an Indigenous project, but I think that the District of Elkford is open to the owner or operator of the building being a First Nations nonprofit or First Nations Development Corporation, as well as a co-op or a nonprofit society that is non-Indigenous.
Thank you.
You're welcome. There's a question here. Will this recording of the meeting be sent to our emails? I suppose if that's easy to do, but we're also going to post it on the website. Ali, is it easy to send the recording out to everyone?
Yeah, absolutely. That's easy enough.
Okay. So yeah, we'll send you a recording so you can have it as you're preparing your proposals, but also we're going to post it on the website so that people who weren't able to attend can also have the same information.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Will all BC Builds calls for projects only be on public land? What if there is private land available? For now, we're starting with government, nonprofit, and community-owned land. Private landowners are most often able to find, either develop it themselves or find development partners. So we're starting with underused government, community, and nonprofit owned land, especially with this housing development opportunities platform.
And the funds is directly coming from the support, the grant funds is directly coming from your department, your office. It's not coming from a bank. We don't need to go to a developer. We don't need to go to a bank. This is all directly coming just through the BC government and the developers, to the developers rather.
So BC Builds has three financial interventions in a project. The first is below market construction financing. The second is if the building is owned and operated by a nonprofit, we can provide grants into a project to get 20% of the units to 20% below market, and that's how the grant amount is determined. So when you're working through your pro formas, 80% of the units are at market, 20% of units are at 20% below market, and the per unit grant amount that goes into the project is determined based on how do we get 20% of our units to 20% below market. The grant itself applies to all the units in the building, not just those that are 20% of units at 20% below. And then again, if the building is owned and operated by a nonprofit society, we can arrange takeout financing for a 35-year amortization. And the financing rates for both construction financing and takeout financing are on the Housing Development Opportunities page so that you can use those to build your pro formas.
What is the length of a pro forma required? 3 years, 3 years, 5 years?
That's a good question. On the, let's look at it right now. We've got a capital and operating budget template that you can submit the application in any way you like, but using the budget template is probably best.
Because just considering the flux of the economy, global, right now, precarious situations with political strife and war and these kind of things, supply chain and all these things. So I was just curious how things that can change within 1 year. One war can change within one global strait for carriers transporting goods and services with the supply chain that can impede things. And so just curious to know. We can't predict what will happen, so it's just basically performer based on what is attached to it today.
Yeah, probably it's a 5-year pro forma. For some reason, the capital and operating budget template isn't opening for me right now in this property opportunity notice. So we'll make sure that it could just be a problem with my computer. But the best thing to do is use the capital and operating budget template that we've provided. I believe it's also on the website, and that will give you. Here we go. Yeah, we're asking for 5-year operating budget.
5-year performance. Okay. And we'll go through the site further and.
Yeah, thank you, Dean. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thanks. Lisa, this is for Jeremy. On the site that you're suggesting right now, you think you can get 80 units on that site, on that square footage you got there, with only 3 floors?
Thanks, Dean. That was the number that came out of the massing concept that the folks at BC Housing helped us with. So I think folks who are interested in putting together projects, you'll see I think what you can get out of it. But that number did come out of that massing.
Okay, and I guess one more for you. The Sparwood build was about 430,000 a unit. And at 225, that's a big shortfall that the society, if it was a society, would have to borrow from CMHC. That's a big challenge for a society that's a nonprofit that have to hire a treasurer to manage and a manager to manage. Anyway, just some thoughts. Thanks.
So the takeout financing comes from BC Builds, not from CMHC, and there would be a mortgage. Like I don't think that there's any expectation that this building would be built without a mortgage, and the rents that are paid in the building would service the mortgage. So that's how that would work. The grants are not meant to cover the total construction cost. They're meant to help offset the construction cost to make the mortgage lower, which then helps 20% of the rents to be 20% below market.
What,
So there will be carrying costs for sure.
what happens if the projected costs for construction development exceeds what was projected, and there's a short and unexpected, who knows what it is that happens, and okay, so the budget, there's more funds needed to complete the project. What would happen in an instance like that?
There'd have to be some resolution among all the parties to figure it out. But why we're doing this proposal call so far before construction is to make sure that we get good bids in by reputable companies that have track records of delivering, so that we don't get into that situation. I mean, it's always a chance that they're going to be cost overruns, but we're going to look and see, is your contingency budget good enough? Have you built in this market? Do you understand the construction costs in this market? Is your per square foot per construction realistic, et cetera, et cetera? So, and we'd obviously look for an adequate contingency in your budget.
And the buildings would also facilitate access for physically challenged, seeing impaired, wheelchairs, walkers, these kind of things, and maybe as well as any kind of emergency access that would be required as for fire emergencies, first responders, access and control. And there's something that I brought up to my partners was the security side of things, the protective services side of things, and nowadays, especially if it's a building or a private home, which the level of crime has exceeded expectations in Canada recently, and theft, breaking, and even persons residing in the same building not being able to per se acquire a key which gains them access to another person's home, and then having this investigation occur where they're trying to figure out who it is and what happened, rather than with access with a card or a key which has all the electronic information on it, shows who accessed the building, what time they came in, what time they left, and if this is your own suite, what time were you in there and left. And these kind of aspects, which are termed in the protective services side of things, electronic locking devices, which comes with a license that comes from the police and all 3 levels of police and all 3 levels of government, which we have.
So just to answer your question about accessibility, so all of the BC Builds buildings need to be built to the accessibility standard in the BC Building Code. There's no additional accessibility requirements. You'll notice in the property opportunity notice that we do award 5 additional points for accessibility above and beyond the BC Building Code, as long as it doesn't compromise project financial viability. In terms of fire access and police access, Jeremy, maybe you can answer that question. I think the in-home security system is kind of beyond the scope of the conversation, but yeah, access for emergency services. Jeremy, I'll turn that over to you.
Yeah, I don't have much to add there. We're not looking to go into building design in terms of access for emergency services. So, we've got fire hydrants adjacent, and potentially the building might be sprinklered depending. So I don't really have anything else to add there.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone have anything else to say or ask or share before we depart? Okay, just a reminder to everyone that the proposals are due for this project by June 28th. You can submit your proposals to info@bcbuildshomes.ca. If you have any follow-up questions, please send those questions to the same email address, and please let Jeremy and his team do the work they're doing in Elkford, and we'll take care of fielding your questions. And once we receive proposals, we'll review them, and then we'll get back to everyone, not just the successful proponent. And then on the homepage of BC Build's website, once the successful proponent has been selected, they'll be listed on the map on the website, so that others who may be interested in participating on the construction side or so on will be able to see who's been selected as well. So that's how we're running that.
Is it, what is the amount of selections that will be made per project? Is it just a one builder? Is it a collaboration, or such? One builder for that project? So one builder, collaboration, nonprofit, government? Or
We're looking for complete proposals for this opportunity. And then the question, will all successful proposals be published in full detail? We haven't considered that yet. I'm not sure. But we will let people know on the website who the successful applicant is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.